Simran, welcome to Media and Me.
Thank
How
you.
are you today?
I'm good. It's really nice to be back in Manchester. I just love it here. And though it's a bit grey outside, it's warmer than London, so it's nice to be here.
Got a funny theme of starting this interview series now talking about the weather because it's just so different in Manchester every single time. Like the first
Yeah.
episode I recorded, it was beautiful. Second time it was raining, and now it's just grey and miserable.
Quite muggy.
It is a little bit muggy.
Quite muggy,
Yeah,
but it'll do.
it will.
It'll do.
Before we get into your role in the industry and how you kind of got there, I would love for you to give us a little intro into who you are and what you've been doing.
Yeah, hi.
And it's a big question.
No, don't worry. I'll try and sum it up in a couple sentences. I'm Simran. I am a journalist, producer, kind of a reporter, a bit of everything really. Journalist that does everything. Born and raised in London and worked in Manchester at ITV where I was a trainee. And now I'm back in London again. But yeah, my passions kind of lie in social affairs, politics, and yeah, I work in broadcast and I love it.
I think it makes sense to start at the beginning, and I always like to ask people this question because even though everyone on this show works in the same field, I always get a different answer. When was it and what made you think this could be the career I want to go into? Because you didn't study journalism at uni.
No, so I did languages at uni. I finished my A-levels. I'd retaken a year of my A-levels just because I did some subjects I didn't like. I thought originally when I was in sixth form, I'm going to be a doctor. That's what I want to do.
Really?
So I did all sciences. Didn't go well. It wasn't for me. It was kind of like I had no desire to study those subjects. So failed my first year of A-levels. And then I thought, right, I'm going to regroup here and do something different. So in my first year, I think I did like biology, chemistry, maths, and
God, that's
history or something like that, which is like completely not me. And then the second time round, I did economics, history, French, and I still stayed with my maths. And so I'd done French at GCSE, but I hadn't done it like for that first year of A-levels. So I had a really brilliant French teacher. She was so nice. And the other person I was doing the A-level with was kind of bilingual at home. So she'd kind of send her off to do like a bit more, extensive learning. And she'd kind of sit down with me and we'd go through all the basics of French and really like try and drill it home. So then I thought, you know what, maybe I'll do languages. So I originally applied for French and politics at uni. Then it was French and history, and then I changed it again. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do straight languages. So I did French and French and Mandarin, which was crazy. I know, crazy subject.
And you'd never spoken a word of Mandarin before you went to do it at uni?
Never done any Mandarin. I don't know why I decided to do it, but I thought, why not? I speak another language at home. My family are Punjabi,
Wow.
so I speak Punjabi at home. So I think maybe like they say if you're born in like a bilingual household, maybe your brain's wired a bit that way. So I thought Mandarin, why not? And yeah, I did languages and it was amazing. It was like an amazing degree. I spent the whole third year away. I was in France for half of it and then China for half of it, just like doing like studies out there. And then it came to graduation and I graduated in the pandemic. So I finished all my exams in my parents' living room at home, sat on the dinner table. I remember doing my last exam and then that was like 4 years of my degree done. And at this point, I was like, I don't really know what I want to do.
Never had a desire for journalism before this?
Never. Like, it was never something that I thought I could do. It didn't even cross my mind
It's
at
a common
all.
theme.
Yeah, didn't even cross my mind. Not something I could do. You know, I watched the news. I was aware of current affairs and what was going on, but it wasn't something that I was like, right, journalism, that's what I want to do. So I think in COVID, like everybody else, I was just consuming so much news and like so much journalism from across the spectrum, whether it's people talking about their experiences in COVID or whether it was what was going on in the real world with, you know, the government and everything like that. And so I started writing like a little blog about what was going on and, you know, how I was feeling at the time. And I thought, well, I kind of like this. Maybe this is something I want to pursue. So this was in June 2020. And then all my friends who had finished uni the year before were all moving out. And I was like, I really want to move out. Like, I don't want to be at home with my parents anymore. I'd been at home for like 3 months, but I was like, I don't want to be here anymore.
It's such a hard thing after you graduate. I mean, I've not graduated yet, but I have friends that have just graduated and they are really struggling. You've had 4 years of independence and then all of a sudden you're back in that house with all those rules and like your tea's on the table at this time. And as lucky and privileged as we are to have those, it's a really hard kind of thing to grasp when you
Definitely. And I was like, right, I want to move out. So I ended up getting a job at a marketing company as a social media intern because I thought social media, publishing, journalism, all kind of goes hand in hand. So I worked at a marketing agency, just like one that was a Chinese marketing agency that did marketing out in China. So what I'd do is I'd kind of write our social media posts. So kind of in there a little bit, like the door's slightly open.
That's all you need.
That's all you need. So then, and then I saw a job that came up at Refinery, which is kind of where it all really started, as a social media editor. It was a freelance job. And I thought, I'll apply for it. There's nothing I've got to lose. I might as well give it a go. My title was social media intern at my first place that I was working. I was on like 17 grand a year, living out of home, and was just a bit like in London. I know, but anything could be better than this. So I applied for that job and I got it, and it was great. I worked with some brilliant journalists at Refinery. Vicky Spratt, who is the housing correspondent at the Independent paper. She's amazing, has done things in Parliament. She's a brilliant journalist. And she actually gave me my first commission to write at Refinery 29. I wasn't doing any writing there. I was just doing the social media posts, which obviously involved some journalism because you're, what's the word, compacting these massive articles in social media posts.
And that's a skill in itself. And also, just quickly to note for anyone wanting to get into journalism, just having your foot in the door is so important. I remember listening to a podcast that Katie Thistleton did. She was a children's TV presenter on CBBC, but before that she was doing admin. So it's just about being in the room. Like you said, your role wasn't journalism, but just being there got you a commission.
Exactly, and having people that want to give you those opportunities. Because I think with journalism, what's difficult is you kind of need that portfolio, that background for people to give you the trust to then write. Because a lot of this stuff is, they pay you money for it, which as they should, but a lot of people won't give you that first little step without having anything else. So Vicky gave me my first ever commission and I wrote an article for them. And I was like, okay, this is all right, actually. Like maybe I want to, print. This is it. I'm going to do print. And then my housemate, who is a journalist, she's a theatre critic, and she told me about the Journalism Diversity Fund and News Associates and, studying for my qualification in journalism. So I applied for the scholarship through the Journalism Diversity Fund. Really lucky I got it.
Did that cover the entire cost of the NCTJ?
Covered the entire cost of the NCTJ.
How much actually is it? Do you know?
I think it was 4.5 grand or something. I want to say in that ballpark, something like that. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was around that. And so that paid for the whole course. They also gave me a bit of money every week towards things because obviously you have to travel there on Saturdays. And so I got that course. So I started doing that as well. And then I also applied for a new job, so I got the place on the course, got the scholarship, and also saw a new job which was permanent because I was freelance at Refinery and it was great, but I wanted more of a permanent, stable job.
So was News Associates part-time, the course you were doing?
Yeah.
So you were able to work full-time at the same time, which is brilliant.
Which is brilliant and a lot.
Well, yeah. Brilliant in one way.
Yeah.
Very stressful in another way.
Really accessible because there was no way I would be able to do it without working, to just live, because I was living out of my house. Obviously I could have moved home with my parents, but for me, I just prefer having my own space. It's just how I am. So I applied for a new job, and that was at the New Statesman, which is obviously a political magazine. And I got that job, and that was a social media editor job, full-time. And that really kind of got me into the broadcast stuff because I was doing a live kind of podcasting on Twitter Spaces every week with a journalist there who is head of the data journalism department. So we'd kind of break down big things that were happening in politics through data journalism and do that live broadcast, which was really great.
Did you enjoy data journalism?
Yeah, it was quite interesting.
I guess you were quite mathsy as well because you did that at A-level.
Yeah,
for me, data was the worst module. I was like, I came here to work with words.
Yeah.
Not numbers.
It's a lot, I think. And the thing is, when you're working in politics and political journalism, numbers are so important. All the voting and the percentages of what people are thinking. Do people agree with that? Do people disagree with that? All that kind of stuff. So that was when I started my News Associates course as well, whilst I was working there. So every Wednesday night, I'd have to rush home a little bit early from work, join on Zoom and do, I think it was 6:30 to 9:30, I'd be on Zoom doing my course. And then every Saturday, I think it was 10 till 5, I was in the Twickenham Centre, which is where it was based, doing a day of learning. And it was like that for 9 months till I had my exams.
About that fast track NCTJ, because I'm doing my degree at News Associates and I do my degree and my NCTJ in 3 years. So I have 3 years to do what you did in 9 months, which to me blows my mind because learning shorthand, media law, all the different things you're doing whilst working a full-time job, Simran, I don't know how you did it.
I don't know how I did it, to be honest. It was crazy. I'd like come home from work and all my housemates would be sitting down. I lived with 5 other girls at the time. It was all of us just in this house, like madhouse
Trying
of
to
girls.
decode your shorthand.
Honestly, madhouse of girls during the pandemic. You know, we'd be locked in. We weren't allowed to go out. It was at the beginning of before I started the course, we were in that period of time where you couldn't really do a lot. So we'd be locked in this house, and then finally we were let out, and that's when I started my course. And it was a lot. Like, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a lot. You know, I'm trying to think what year it was now. I think it was 2022 I finished. And how long ago was that? 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I was 24, 25 in London for the first time living out, finishing uni. So you kind of want to go out and do things, but equally I've got to study for this course. So I think it just involved a lot of, right, guys, I'm going to have to go upstairs and do an hour of shorthand or an hour of media law or go and do this. Or, you know, there were some days I'd have to book off the Friday so I could write stuff in my portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a question of balancing my life. And I'd be lying if I didn't say, you know, yeah, Friday nights I was at the pub some nights and would wake up in the morning and think, oh my God, I've got to get to Twickenham now. But it was just part of the parcel of it. And I guess if I did it differently, I'd probably spent more time studying, but it worked out well in the end.
Same outcome.
Exactly. So I can't complain too much. But it was a lot of, you know, putting it first sometimes when you didn't really want to. But I think for me, it was exciting because it was like, right, I've got this scholarship, I've got this journalism course. This could be like my in. If I get this, you know, things could go massively change and go in a different direction for me. So that was also part of the reason for wanting to study for it. And I made some great friends there that I'm still friends with now. And we always reminisce on us just like crying after shorthand exam because it was just so awful.
I remember the first shorthand exam I did. I was like fine when I came out the room, and the minute I got on the phone to my mum, I just burst into tears. I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do this.
It's horrible. It's so stressful.
Grueling, isn't it?
It's so grueling.
I've not even passed 100 yet. I'm like at 80 and
I didn't do 100.
a barrier.
I didn't do 100. I can't even remember how much I got. But I remember the last ever shorthand exam I did, you know, when they do a little test at the beginning, so, you know, so you can get into the zone. They did it, and the words were stuff like treasure trove.
No.
And like metal detecting. And I thought, oh, that's fine. The test is that. The real things, there's no way the real thing's going to be about treasure. The real thing was about treasure, in fact. And I remember doing the exam, and afterwards I looked at my friend Molly across the room, and we were just like, well,
no chance.
Brilliant. At least it's done now.
Yeah.
Painless, it's done. Oh God, yeah. It was crazy. Just doing so much studying all the time, and, you know.
And you just finished uni.
Yeah. Basically, well, luckily it was. I think I had a year and a bit.
Okay,
but still, it's, you know,
but
4 years of
getting back
study.
into academics after having a year out, that's hard to get in that mindset.
Yeah.
For those who don't know about the NCTJ and what modules you do, because I'm not actually totally sure the modules you do in the fast track course, talk to us a little bit about what you did at the beginning and kind of what modules you sat towards the end and throughout.
So I think when you first get there, it's just about what the course will teach you and trying to understand what you get out of it at the end. And I think for a lot of us weren't from journalism backgrounds. We were just kind of either retrain. There's a lot of people that were retraining. There was a lot of people that were looking for that qualification because they'd done maybe English at uni, and obviously it's very different. So it was just about teaching us the basics of, you know, how to write the top line of a story, a headline, all that kind of stuff.
It sounds really menial, but the intro is something I struggle the most with still.
It's so hard. It's the first thing that's going to grab people in. So it was really like hammering that home. And then we did the media law stuff. We did digital journalism stuff. We had to make kind of like a moving website page that was a story, that told a story with some data in there, with pictures, you know, all that kind of stuff. Because nowadays everything is online. It's all digital focused.
That is a good thing about the News Associates course, actually. It's not kind of stuck in the past.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be easy for them to just teach print, and this is how you write the top line, and this is how you write hard news copy. But they do a great job at kind of podcasting and all this kind of thing.
You need the pragmatism, because journalism is changing all the time.
Every day.
And we all see that. So I think it was great that they taught you just more than, you know, the basic of how to write a newspaper article. But yeah, media law, public affairs, so learning about how local councils and things work, which is really important because that's the foundation of so much news. It was kind of every little thing was ticked off, really.
Did you feel well equipped? We'll go on to what you did afterwards, which is very exciting, but going into that job that you went into, did you feel equipped after that course?
I think it did, teach you things that you necessarily wouldn't have been aware of. I think, for example, obviously I was doing social media editing still, but being able to summarize a massive article about something really complicated in a few words, yeah, that definitely taught me that. And I think it just gives you a bit more confidence, doesn't it? That you think, I've learned a little bit about this now. Maybe I do know a few things. And like media law is so massive. I mean, in my job now, we have a whole legal team that have to check through things because it's so big and can get you in so much trouble.
That's quite comforting that you've got a legal team to check through things.
Me and the lawyer, we're best mates.
Like this.
Yeah. So I think, there's that level of confidence it gives you that you think you've got a few skills that can help you in that. And I think that's massive because for a lot of young journalists or people who are just starting out, you don't think you're good enough because you don't feel like you know anything. So it helps you, give you that little kick up the bum to be like, you do know your stuff. Go on, have a go at it. So yeah, definitely.
And you clearly did know your stuff because after News Associate, you got the ITV traineeship.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know it existed. I had no idea about it. Everything that I kind of did in journalism was someone else telling me like, you can have a go at this or, you can do that. And it was like, oh, okay, maybe I should give that a go. I'm from a background where, my parents, I'm from a working class family of, Punjabi family that maybe weren't really aware of the ins and outs of media and journalism. And so that none of this was like said to me when I wanted to do it. It was kind of friends saying, you give us a go, or colleagues being like, have you heard of this? So with the ITV News traineeship, I decided then that I wanted to do broadcast because of the little bits of broadcast that I've been doing at the New Statesman, and Creative Access, which is a platform that helps diversify media, both class and race, everything, just basically making it more diverse. They had a scheme that was an ITV mentor you could apply for. So I thought, I'll give it a go, see what happens. And I think the first time that I applied for it, I got paired up with someone from, I don't know, maybe the finance department. And I remember emailing the lady back being like, I'm really grateful, but it's not kind of what I'm looking for. And she said, okay, leave it with me. I'll find you someone else. And so she found me a man called Owain from ITV Wales, who is a programme and digital editor there. And I remember being paired up with him, and he was brilliant. He would just like tear my CV to shreds and be like, change that. My cover letter would like be like, what is this? What does this mean? Change it. And he told me about the ITV traineeship. And he said, why don't you apply? He said, I'm not saying that you'll get it, but give it a go because you'll get feedback. Just apply for it.
Literally got nothing to lose.
Yeah, exactly. And I said, all right, I'll give it a go. So I applied for it and I put Manchester down. And
what made you want to do Manchester? Was it because you just loved it at uni?
Loved it at uni. A lot of my close friends who I'm obviously seeing here this weekend, they all stayed here.
Right.
I just wanted to be back. I loved it so much. It was such like a core part of like my growing up. I feel like it's where I became an adult. I love it so much. So I wanted to be back in Manchester. So I applied for it. And then next thing you know, I had an interview. And kind of the interview process is not the same as your average interview. You have to kind of do a few tasks. So the task that I had to do was a news quiz. So it was about 20 questions, I think, on what's going on right now, everything from sport to politics, everything. Questions about like cricket, which I have no idea about cricket, but you give it your best shot and you try. Yeah. And then you had to do a task where they said that this is the story, how would you package it for social media and that kind of thing.
I guess you had a great background.
Exactly. I was really lucky that kind of prepared me for that. And then I had an actual interview with the head of news, Lucy, and who then became my line manager, a lady called Laura. And I had an interview with them, and that was kind of about just a general job interview, what are your weaknesses, that kind of thing. And when I got it, so I remember Lucy calling me, and she said, oh, it's Lucy from Granada, just wanted to let you know you've got the job. And I think I said, shut up. And she was like, is that a good shut up? And I was like, yeah, really good. Sorry, yeah, amazing. Because I remember after I did it, I called my parents and I said, like, I don't think I got it.
You weren't confident?
I wasn't confident at all. I knew how competitive it was. I didn't really think I was there yet in terms of like where I thought you had to be to get that kind of scheme. And I remember calling my mum and dad being like, I didn't get it. And they were like, it's fine. You can try again next year. This isn't the end. There'll be other opportunities. And then on the Monday I got the call and I remember being so shocked. I think I nearly cried. I remember being in my bedroom and I got it. It was just crazy. Like I remember being like, wait, what do you mean I've got it? And I went downstairs and told all my housemates and everyone was really happy. And then, yeah, I think it pretty much started like a month and a bit after that. And honestly, it's the best scheme ever. I'm so grateful to it because I would not be where I am without it.
So with that traineeship, was it very much kind of throw you in at the deep end, crack on with it? Or was it, we'll foster how good you're going to be at this job and we'll teach you the ropes. Was there a lot of training before you started?
So it was kind of like training on the job.
Right.
And I didn't even answer your question before. They'd said to me on the phone, the reason we gave you the job is because you said, I just want to learn as much as I can. I want to be a sponge. I want to learn from everybody. Like, all I want to do is grow and be like a brilliant journalist. I think that counts for a lot. If you're early in your career and you're showing people that you like have the F and the
Because they
drive.
don't expect you to know everything. They kind of,
No.
and when you said like I didn't think I was there yet, they probably kind of want someone they can mould as well. I think if you went in there and you knew it all, what would be the point of going for a traineeship?
Exactly. So I think that was a massive thing. So I would say to anyone who is starting out, wherever you end up, whatever you do, just try and learn from the people that are there, because a lot of people have been there for ages. So they know their stuff and they are probably willing to help you and teach you. So the traineeship was great. So you kind of learned on the job. So they trained you to be a production journalist. So every region across the country had one trainee, apart from national, which had two because of the London newsroom and the national newsroom. And they train you in doing their bulletins, so how to write the scripts, how to cut the pictures. I got edit training, so how to edit on Avid. You got script writing training with people that have been doing it for decades. You got reporting training from amazing reporters like Rob Smith and Greg Easteel, who are two correspondents in the regions at ITV. It was just brilliant. For someone that didn't really know much, I came out the other side and I'd done so much, you know. You went around to all the different regions. We went to Norwich and went to ITV Anglia. You went to ITV Wales. We were down in ITV National. Yeah, so it was brilliant. So it was kind of like learning on the job. So you'd maybe go and learn something and then you'd be put on that shift for a couple of weeks to put into practice.
Amazing. That's the best way to learn.
Especially in journalism, massively.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got to be hands-on. It was just a brilliant scheme. You got taught how to use a camera and self-shoot. Like, it was just, it was so good.
So your title was production journalist. I think for people watching who kind of aren't familiar with the industry, because that's kind of what I wanted the show to be, is for people to learn, because like you said before, there's not a lot of things out there. Production journalist, how is a production journalist different from your regular journalist?
Right, so when I first started, I was a trainee production journalist. And basically, a production journalist, at least at ITV, it might be different everywhere else, but at ITV, what you did was output the bulletins. So that was lunchtime, Good Morning Britain bulletins, and the late bulletin and the weekend bulletin. So you'd write the scripts, cut the pictures, make sure all the stories are in the right order. You're basically a producer. But the different thing was, at ITV as a production journalist, you also get to do other things. So maybe you might be out getting an interview for a reporter. I was eventually allowed to go out and report. So I'd go out and report when I was just a production journalist shift, when I wasn't on a bulletin. You basically jack of all trades.
Everything.
Anything that you might need you to do, you could do it.
That's what I was going to say to you. Like, your title is producer now at ITV, but then I see you doing live broadcasts. I'm like...
Yeah, it's a bit of everything, really. And I think that's much more appreciated nowadays. I think maybe in the old days it was a bit more, you have a one skill and you do it, whether you're a producer, whether you're a reporter, whether you're a presenter. Now everyone kind of does everything, which I think is probably better. And especially if someone like me who doesn't necessarily know which way I want to go, whether I want to be on screen or whether I want to be off screen, it's great to have the opportunity to do both. As a production journalist, you're basically a producer, but also you get to do other bits and bobs. And then my new title as a producer is completely different to that as well. So it changes all the time, really. At
the end of the traineeship, was it guaranteed you were going to get a job, or was it kind of like a conversation that you had to have?
No, was not guaranteed you get a job. As everyone probably knows, there's a lot going on in journalism right now. There's a lot of cuts. It's a lot harder.
Don't, because I'm graduating in May.
I'm sorry to break it to you, Mia, but no, it's fine. It is fine. There are jobs out there, but I think it's a lot harder than it used to be. You know, people aren't consuming news the same way as they were.
No.
So for our year group, we were all lucky. We all got extended afterwards for another, I think it was 6 months to the end of the year. We finished in June. And then from that point, it was kind of short-term contracts. In other regions, some people managed to get a permanent job and stay on.
Amazing.
But it just depends on where you are, really, and what the demand is like. Granada is a region that is, a legacy region. A lot of people want to work there. A lot of people have been working there for a long time.
Yeah.
So people don't leave. So there's no leeway to have people there for longer.
Yeah, people work there for like 40, 50 years, don't they?
Exactly. So it was one of those. I kind of had that short-term contract that kept rolling on. So getting a staff job is a lot more difficult. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. But I was really lucky in what I got afterwards, yeah.
Did you have a choice in what you got, or was it just like, this is the job we think you would be great at, here you go, kind of thing?
It was just, I just became a fully fledged production journalist. So
Right.
it was no longer a trainee. I was
Just a gradual. It was just a gradual.
Yeah.
It was like inevitable kind of thing.
Yeah. And so I was a production journalist, but then once you're actually a production journalist, that's when I could start putting my hand in other things, you know, going out and reporting, doing a bit of presenting, being on the news editing desk, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Going to the Big Brother house.
Going to the Big Brother house, yeah.
That was random.
Oh,
I just
my
needed
God.
to ask you about it, because I was like, when I saw that, because I like obviously follow you on Instagram and stuff, I was like, this girl is living the dream.
Honestly, it was
that
amazing.
like?
So what had happened was I was in the office and I was going to London that weekend to see my family, and at Granada, we have an entertainment correspondent who's been doing it for ages. You know, she's brilliant. Like, she's amazing. And she couldn't go to London on Friday night. And I'd been going on all week about, I love Big Brother, I love Big Brother, Big Brother, Big Brother, Big Brother. And so Gabriella, who was our planning editor at the time, she went, I think she'd said to our programme and digital editor, well, if Caroline can't go, just send Sim. Like, Sim will go. And I was like, no one told me, though. No one told me. And then on Friday, so Friday was when I actually did the interview. On Wednesday, Gabs just kind of said, like, if you were going to go to London and, you know, go to the Big Brother house, would you go? And I was like, would I go?
Is that even a question?
Obviously I'd go, and I'd get pictures in every single room. And she's like, yes, we might send you on Friday, do a little piece in the house. And I was like, I'm there. Wherever you need me to be, I'm there. And so I went, and it was crazy. I've never felt more like a journalist, which is crazy to say because it's the Big Brother house, and maybe some people would not see that as, you know, nitty gritty journalism at best. Yes, thank you. But I just felt so privileged in that moment.
I bet you were like, how is this my job?
Honestly, I do that nearly every day, to be fair. But I was sat in the Big Brother house with AJ, Diddy and Wilbus sat opposite me. I was, you know, it wasn't even in the house. It was in the big studio where they filmed the after show. It was just lights, camera.
Did you have your own little moment walking down the runway, like you're coming out the house?
I was too scared to do that. There was a lot of influencers there. It was quite scary.
Was there?
Yeah, it's quite scary.
That's an interesting topic, actually. The kind of, say if you did want to get into presenting, or anyone did want to get into presenting, I've kind of not talked about this on the show yet, the way kind of influencers are infiltrating into the industry. And I have a lot of respect, like me and Manzi, who's a producer at BBC Radio 1, we had a conversation about having massive respect for influencers, because filming like TikToks, like if I wanted to film a TikTok for like behind the scenes filming this show, I've got so much to think about. Like filming is just another one of those things. But kind of talk to me about influencers infiltrating into presenting and kind of taking those, not opportunities away from trained journalists, but do you think they do a better job, an equal job? What are your kind of thoughts?
I actually have a lot of thoughts about this. I think I've spoken to this with my friends about this a lot. I think obviously now when you see like press junkets, a lot of the time it's influencers that are doing the interviews. I understand why it's attractive for companies to get these people in, because it means that, you know, someone who's watched TikToks and is going to maybe not going to go watch that film and suddenly sees their favourite influencer interviewing stars, it's going to perk their interest, isn't it? Rather than an average Joe who maybe they don't know, like a journalist, a culture journalist, for example. But sometimes I do think it's a shame. I think for people that, you know, journalism is it's an industry where you really have to like graft, like it's difficult. And I think for some people that want those opportunities and have really put in the work, it's a shame when they miss out because companies maybe care more about clicks and views rather than the quality of the interview, which somebody who, I don't know, is a culture journalist and is so aware of, I don't know, for example, let's say the Oasis stuff, you know, imagine somebody that is so immersed in music culture, aware of it, studied it, wants to be a music journalist, doesn't get that opportunity because there's an influencer that is going to get some clicks. I find it a bit of a shame.
Yeah, me too. I think, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but I do agree, and I also think journalists at the end of the day ask the questions that people want to know the answers to. I think there's a lot of kind of like these TikTokers who do interviews, it's like, right, tell me what's in your bag kind of thing, do you know what I mean? And it's like, do viewers really want to see that? I feel like a journalist is going to get to the nitty gritty of like what's going on in their lives is kind of so much more watchable.
I agree, and I think it's just the fact that, you know, if you're a fan as well, someone can probably relate to you as a fan asking a question if you're a journalist who really knows everything about them, rather than an influencer who might be on asking those same questions. Like, it might be funny and entertaining. If you're watching an interview because you want to really get to the depths of something, maybe sometimes they aren't there. But then equally, maybe for them that's been the route into that industry. That's what they want to do.
Yeah.
So
I would love to know if there's like an influencer who always wanted to get into journalism and presenting that has gone via social media.
yeah, I mean, I think now, if I think, for example, the newsreaders that I know at work, so for them, they were doing journalism. They were reporters, or they were, really in the journalism before they became newsreaders. It's a bit different, I think, for presenting, I don't know, even Big Brother or something. I don't think it's the same kind of caliber of presenting. It's very, very different, two very different fields. But yeah, I think it's changing. Social media is massive now, and a lot of people are building their careers off the back of social media, which I get. It's accessible.
Capitalise on it while you can.
Exactly, and everyone can do it. If you've got a phone, you can make content.
Absolutely.
And someone might see that content and be like, do you know what, that was good, let me just get that person in, or do you know what, anything like that. So yeah, I get it, and I get why people would use that method. But yeah, I don't know, I think there must be people that are influencers that have that kind of presence. Yeah, and they maybe for them that's been the route to get to where they are now. So yeah, I'm sure they exist. Yeah, definitely.
Going back to you, so you just recently moved to London. Was that a kind of a push from you to go back to London for ITV? Did you kind of sit down and have that conversation, or was it kind of a suggestion from them, we have this job for you but it's in London?
Oh God, I think it's hard with journalism. When you're in it, I'm sure you'll speak to a lot of people like this. It's sometimes hard not to feel like you're always looking for that next opportunity, the next step up.
I'm really struggling with that at the minute. I'm never satisfied with what I'm doing, ever.
And that really exists, I think, especially with journalism, because it's so like people facing. You can't get away from what your friend's doing, or you can't get away from what you saw someone at another company doing.
Always
or
want
that report.
more.
Yeah. So you're always like, well, I want to do that too. I want to do that. I'd be lying if I said I didn't compare myself to people. You do. I think with the job situation in the ITV regions at the moment, it's difficult. And because I was on contracts, that was kind of grating on me a bit. It was becoming a bit more difficult. I didn't know where I was going to be in 6 months. And the job that came up in London was permanent. I think you have a level of, privilege as a trainee, because people are aware of you, because there's not many of you. So I applied for the job. If I was going to move anywhere else, it would have been London. My family and all my school friends are still there. So yeah, I just saw that job. It was the only one that I thought I could actually see myself doing. I applied, and then within a few days I got it, and within a month I was moving to London. But it all happened really fast because it was the general election.
Ah, so they needed you.
Oh my God. But I didn't move to London for the general election. So my first day in London was the Monday after the general election.
Yeah.
The Friday, when the results and the polling was finished and we were, analysing what happened, I was in the office at 2 a.m. in Manchester. I went to bed at midnight because I couldn't sleep, because it was just like news barrage.
Yeah. I feel like if you sleep, you wouldn't have a clue what's going on.
Exactly. So I was just there. And then I went in the newsroom at 2, and then went to the pub with a few of my colleagues. Goodbye. Moved to London that night and started in London on Monday.
Oh my God.
It was horrific.
Chaos.
It was chaos.
I can imagine.
But I think my life is a bit chaos.
But I think it just is as a journalist. Like you're always, I was going to say, what does a kind of week in your life look like now? But I guess that's just completely different every single week. Are you doing more? Because obviously I've seen you a lot kind of corresponding in like live broadcasts and stuff like that. Like the newsreaders will be going to you as the expert, which I think is amazing. But are you doing more behind the scenes? Are you doing more on camera?
The shifts kind of look different every day. But what I do is, if I'm on a 9 a.m. producing shift, I'll get 3 or 4 reporters. I'll be assigned their stories, and I'm making sure they've got their archive. I've edited some sequences for them. I've made sure their scripts are okay, that their name straps are all okay. I've put them in the running order. I cut so when you watch the news, they go coming up, and they do I cut all those pictures. Like, it's just kind of working on that 6 o'clock program under the watch of the program editor. So you work with reporters really closely, just making sure they've got everything they need and helping them with any edits. Then I'm also still doing the output stuff of the lunchtime bulletin, the late bulletin, the weekend bulletin.
It's a full-on job.
It's a lot. Like it is a lot. Every day I'm
And a
like,
lot of responsibility as well.
yeah, and it's quite stressful, I think, because in London the difference that we have is we're on straight after national, as all the regions are, or before national, and we only have a small window of time between those two bulletins or programs. Sometimes there's no rehearsal. I've just got to go in there and hope for the best, that hope everything I wrote and cut is fine.
Oh
So that can be a lot. So it's quite high pressure. I would say a lot more high pressure here. I think also you are in the national newsroom and there is a level of intensity and pressure there because it's a bit constant. So that you kind of feed off that a little bit. But yeah, I'm doing behind the scenes stuff at the minute. And again, it could be where I want to go. So I'm lucky to be able to try it out and see what I think. But yeah.
How do you switch off if you do?
I don't know. How do I switch off? I think as a person, I am surprisingly calm in work, but as a person outside of work, just like all the time. So it's really weird. I think for work for me, I can go there, I can get my job done, be calm under the most stressful pressure situations. But then almost when I leave that office, it's kind of done.
I think it's really good that you can make that separation.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people could do that. I think if I was working your job, it would just be, but that's kind of the way I'm wired anyway, just like constant. I don't think I would be able to switch off.
I think it depends. I think when it's something like this, when I'm working on the programme, it's very different because every day it's a new programme.
Yeah,
there's no point in me thinking, there's no point in me thinking about yesterday's programme because tomorrow's new stories are going to be completely different.
True.
Whereas when I was like reporting and doing a bit more of that, those were my stories. So they were all consuming. I'd be like after work, sitting there emailing people.
Right.
On the weekend, doing phone calls, all that kind of stuff to make sure that all those elements were there. So when it's like a story that you're really passionate about, which I really enjoy, that for me is, I think, where I do my best journalism, when I'm really passionate about a subject and it does consume me a little bit. You know, it's a labour of love with all this stuff. That's when it's difficult to switch off, you know.
Me and Manzi talked about this, kind of giving that editorial control away once you finish a story. Like if I work on a feature, I worked on my period poverty documentary last year, finishing that and like being able to switch off at the end of the day, it just wasn't even in the question. Like they become passion projects, and you do your best journalism when you're heavily involved and invested in a story. Did you find it difficult to kind of emotionally detach from a lot of things that you've done?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the journalism that I did, especially when I was in Manchester, was about social affairs and, for me, really important issues. And they were emotionally exhausting. Some of the people that I was speaking to had really horrible stories. If I'm honest, there were times when I'd do an interview, the cameras would cut, the interview would leave, and I'd burst into tears with my cameraman because it was just so emotional and difficult. You know, I'm speaking to people that have really difficult lives, and I'm there recording it for a piece to hopefully make one person at home think, wait, that's awful, maybe I shouldn't think the way I do about that story. For example, I did a lot of work on homeless asylum seekers and refugees, and the narrative at the moment in the media has been pretty dangerous, I would say. So that for me was trying to maybe make one person at home change what they thought.
And also in the back of your mind, I've got to do their story justice, and I've got to tell their story. You've got a huge responsibility to make that come across in the best way possible.
It's hard, but as long as you know that you're going into it with the best intention,
not exploitative.
Exactly. I highly doubt that any of us would ever do that. But you know, go into that room knowing that you want to tell their story and you want it to be for the best. You do, and it's building that trust as well. With a lot of these stories, there was people that I'd be speaking to for weeks, and they would be, I'll speak to you. No, I can't. Yeah, I will.
Relationship.
All that kind of stuff, but it's thanks to those people that I was able to do that journalism because they told me their stories.
And I think there's a perception in journalism that you have to have quite a stiff upper lip and a really good backbone. But I also think, because I'm quite a sensitive person, but I think having that sensitive human side to you, you need that, because if you go in as a journalist rather than as Simran or as Mia, they're not going to talk to you. Like, journalists have a bad enough rep as it is. So if you just go in as another human, talking to another human, sympathising, that's really important. And I think for anyone watching this, like, don't think, oh, to be a journalist, I've got to be this, like, really hard, like,
gritty,
interviewer.
non-sensitive, like, oh, I'm not even going to react to what they've said. The best journalists I see on the screen are the ones that genuinely look like they're listening and care about what the other person's saying. and whether that's showing a bit of emotion on your face. I mean, if you watch some of my pieces back, my face looks like I'm about to burst into tears just listening to these people, but it's because it's real life.
Human.
Yeah, and it's real life you're listening to. It's not just a fake story that's on the telly. That's someone's life,
day-to-day life,
and you want to have that sensitivity and that reassurance for them that you're listening to them and you want to do their story justice. So I think it's a good thing to show emotion. I do, and I think some people might disagree, but I don't care.
Going back to London, as a girl that's from up north, another perception is that you have to move to London to kind of make it, whatever that means. I kind of lived in London for a couple of years, and I don't really have an intention to go back there and work full time. I'd never say never, but in my head, I'm kind of in Manchester now. And obviously we have Media City, and there's other bits in Cardiff and Leeds, there's other kind of hubs of media. In your opinion, do you think you do have to go to London to make it in the industry, or do you think there's enough opportunities in the different regions across the UK? Or do you think more needs to be done for people in regions outside of London to make it in the industry?
More needs to be done massively. I think there are opportunities that are starting to come up, definitely. I mean, Manchester's starting to become a massive media hub, which is great, but definitely more needs to be done. I mean, it's such a privilege to be born and raised in London. I could just move home with my parents, find my feet, and then do whatever I needed to do. But yeah, I think more needs to be done, and you don't need to move to London to make it. It just depends what you want for your life, to be honest. Yeah, you might want to be in the national newsrooms, which most are down in London, but equally, Channel 4 are starting to have hubs up north. BBC Breakfast is based up north. Those are massive programmes, massive news channels, but still aren't enough, I think. I think if you don't want to have to fork out thousands on rent and all the rest of it, all the rest of the things that come from London, you know, that come with London, as someone that's from there, like, I kind of go down there now and I'm like, it's very rat race. And if you don't want that for yourself, it's fine. Yeah. So I think, yeah, more definitely needs to be done. I think if you are wanting to move to London, that also should be made a bit more accessible for people. It's an ordeal, to be honest. It's not very easy. Rent's expensive. It's a massive city. It can be really scary. But no, in answer to your question, I don't think there is enough opportunities outside London, though people are trying. And no, I don't think you have to move to London if you want to make it, and you shouldn't have to move to London if you want to make it.
That is reassuring, and I'm sure it'll reassure a lot of people who live outside of London that, no, you don't have to work in these big national newsrooms to get to where you want to be in the industry. Just to wrap it up, I know we touched on it before, but I wanted to see if you viewed yourself in 5-10 years' time, where do you think you would be in the industry? Where would you like to be?
I think I want to be someone that has done some journalism that's changed something. That would be like the ultimate dream. Like, there are some brilliant correspondents at ITV, like Dan Hewitt, who have gone to Parliament and actually changed things with
legislation,
their journalism, which would be incredible. I think just to have an impact as a journalist is all I really want, whether that's on screen or off screen. I don't think that matters, but I think just having created some journalism that matters and has changed something. That's the reason I want to be a journalist, you know, is just to share stories of people that can't share their own stories. It sounds a bit like a cliche, but it's true. There are still so many stories that are untold, and just to have a few people at home think, wait a second, let's change what I thought. And then to have that done on a massive scale where it's actually changing people's lives would be amazing. So yeah, that would be ideal really, but we'll have to wait and see, won't we?
I can't even tell you how thankful I am for you giving up your time and coming all the way to Manchester to be a guest on Media and Me. Where can people follow you and follow your journey on socials?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. It's so nice that people even think of me for this kind of stuff. My friends drop me off and were like, what are you doing a podcast about? And I was like, yeah,
be silly.
Fair enough. In terms of my socials, so my Twitter is just Simran ITV. That's probably where I do the most of my journalism posting. My Instagram is just, you know it, it's a bit chaotic. We don't want to follow that.
I love it. It gives a bit of reality. Like, you can actually have a fun life as well.
Trying my best. Work hard, play hard. Isn't that what they say?
Absolutely.
Trying my best. But yeah, thank you for having me.
No worries. Guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of Media and Me, and I hope to see you in the next one.